SECfans.com, week 11, going to discuss Clemson and Boston College. We actually did a Clemson video in our previous video that we released this week. It's a hypothetical, and if Clemson and Alabama played today, we run our computer model, we have some discussion, kind of some broad discussion and specific matchup discussion. It's a good talk. We don't give our score predictions because obviously we're going to do that if they play, but it's a good kind of primer for what these two teams are going to bring to the table if they do happen to play one another. But right now, we're going to discuss a game that actually is going to be played, and it's Boston College and Clemson. One of the last few blips on the radar for Clemson. We don't think, surprise, surprise, that it's going to be a big one in terms of giving them any challenge. But we want to talk about it and give us an opportunity to talk about these two teams. This is going to be mostly a model-only discussion, not really a lot of back and forth with me and Josh. I'll come in at the end and give my prediction as well, but mostly going to just get straight into the numbers and discuss those. So I'm going to let you take it away.
So Clemson and Boston College, we're talking about doing a hypothetical for this game, so we thought it'd be useful to also do a model, the Clemson and Boston College game. This is a ranked game. There are not many of them this week, but it's not a game, spoiler alert, that we think is going to be particularly close. So our model is designed to be a baseline, sort of a B-plus game from both teams. What does it look like? It looks at who you are, who your opponents are, your relational matchup in terms of your strengths, and looking at each team's and sort of generating some intermediate statistics. So Clemson allowing 55% of opponent rushing averages, 82% of opponent passing averages. Anything below 65%, or really even below 75% of rushing averages is elite. Anything really below 80% in passing averages is elite. It's just harder to stop teams from passing the ball than it is running it. Teams tend to get their passing averages more or less every game. Boston College, 88% of opponent rush averages and 83% of opponent passing averages. In other words, Boston College is good against the run. 88% is below 90, we usually say, is pretty good. We really want to see that number get below 85% to say you're a good run defense. If you're above 85%, you're doing well, but really 95% is the as much as you should say it'd be 100, it's actually 95 because teams have cupcakes thrown in there. Everybody's statistics are a little bit inflated. You should hold teams below their average if you're a major Power 5 team. In the past, it looks like it's pretty even, really. Average out to 83% for Clemson and Boston College. Here's the problem. Clemson's numbers include two triple option teams. It's kind of an issue with our model because it's based off yards per attempt. I don't have a proper way of filtering for a triple option team because Georgia Southern and Georgia Tech average 10 yards per attempt. But they also only throw it, 4 times a game. So, 10 yards per attempt, it's not really, it doesn't have much of an effect on Clemson's overall season numbers. If I drop that number for both those teams down to an average Clemson opponent, and I assume they're about average passing offenses, which maybe even isn't fair, all of a sudden Clemson's actually averaging about 92% or allowing 92% of opponent passing averages. So Clemson's pass defense is merely above average statistically, I would say. It's a little weird because of those two games, but I think it's pretty darn fair to sort of filter them out. And you get to that 92% number, which says it's a merely above average. The problem in this game is how one-sided Boston College is run to pass. So Clemson, an excellent run team, 6.92 yards per carry, one of the best marks in college football. Etienne has been extremely effective running the ball against most everyone they've played. We've talked about this a little bit. There's some caveats there that this number has not been consistent, even though it's been, even though they are leading the country in rushing offense in a yard per carry sense. They have been shut down 3 times this season playing better defenses. But other than that, they're also averaging 8.4 yards per attempt. So they have been able to throw the ball even when they can't run it that well. Boston College, 4.25 yards per carry, 7.7 yards per attempt. Both those numbers are pretty darn good. We usually say 4.5 yards per carry is the point where your offense can your run game can kind of carry the offense. But really, 4 yards per carry and 6.5 yards per pass is sort of the competency mark. Boston College is above that mark on both, but not by a whole heck of a lot. Um, the issue, as I said, is that Boston College is almost 2-to-1 run to pass. Not quite, but it's about 60% to 40% run pass ratio. That's a problem because, as I said, Clemson, if they have a weakness, not that anybody's really been able to exploit it except maybe Syracuse to a certain extent. Granted, they haven't played any elite passing offenses really because North Carolina State seems to wilt under pressure. But the one area that maybe you can form an argument would be that Clemson's pass defense hasn't really been tested. And again, we already said sort of established statistically that they've been just merely above average relative to their opponents and how other people have done against the teams they've played. Boston College doesn't throw the ball that much. So 2.3 yards per carry isn't going to get it done. 6.7 yards per attempt isn't going to get it done. Our model thinks they're going to be held under 4 yards per play. And likewise, the model thinks that Clemson is going to get 6.5 yards per play. So our model has Clemson winning 38-24. So a solid Clemson 2-score win. The last thing I'll say on that, I don't have a lot of faith in that number. And the reason is pretty simple. Boston College had 45 points on Temple with 4.2 yards per play. That's unlikely and it's weird. And in our model self-trains itself. So it looks at your own history and it looks at what it's taken for you to be successful and what kind of scoring you got on that production. And I don't mean we take your yardage and take the number of points you scored, divide the two, and get a point per yard. It's not nearly that simple. It's actually develops its own multivariate curve for your team and generates its own variables. So I'm not in sort of sticking my own variables in this and having my hand in the machine too much. I'm letting the computer generate it itself. The problem with that is if your team does stuff that's really weird, the model can get kind of confused and think, oh, yeah, you can score 45 points off 4.2 yards per play. There are a lot of extenuating circumstances there, but it's, I think, kind of messing with the model a little bit. To be clear, the model does take into account things like turnovers and field position and non-offensive touchdowns to the extent that they are a trend. They do start to get calculated into the model. I think the more fair point is at 3.6 yards per play, they only got 13 points on Purdue. So 38-24 is the model. I think that's unrealistic. I think more realistic is probably about 38-17 Clemson over Boston College. I think Boston College is a good team. I think the matchup to watch here, I will say, is Boston College. Their pass defense has been pretty darn good through this year. We already talked about it in our, you'll hear it if you want to talk about an hypothetical. There's a lot of signs that North Carolina State secondary is quite poor. It's probably why our model had that game being a lot closer than Vegas. I think Vegas saw that as a problem. I couldn't explain the Vegas line, and I think that's why it was in the North Carolina State Clemson game so high for Clemson. I think this game is a game that Clemson should definitely win, but given the schedule that Clemson's faced, the interesting thing, if you're an outsider or even a Clemson fan, is the question of how well can Clemson do against Boston College passing the ball, because they probably are going to run it pretty darn well and score. But when Lawrence gets at least a little more resistance, does he continue to have great numbers the way he has the past few weeks?
None of that's real crazy. I got the model really. I think it's hitting on some things. Like you said, there's some weirdness there as well. I think this is kind of a statement game for Clemson. They know they can kind of sleepwalk the rest of the way, win ugly if they have to, and still make the playoffs, but they don't want to do that. They want to play to a standard. They want to keep things humming. I'm going to go a little bit higher than you on the scoring, 45-13 for Clemson. Tell me what you think.
So I think that's all pretty fair. The one thing I'll add to this is, Boston College is nationally, according to S&P Plus, the 38th ranked team in the country. Advanced statistics suggest that Boston College is probably not really a top 20 football team in terms of overall quality. They deserve the ranking because of their record. We could have a debate about whether or not the record is a result of opponents, but we're SEC fans. I'm not here to be an SEC hater. I'm just pointing out in terms of advanced statistics, they're not a phenomenal football team. statistically. But the one thing they are is they're 25th in passing defense in S&C Plus, and they're 38th in passing offense in S&P Plus. So the thing to watch in this game really is, can Clemson throw the ball consistently well against Boston College, and does their secondary play well? That's something we're going to talk about a little bit in the hypothetical, as the two things that we're not, still not completely sold on either way. We don't quite know how to evaluate it. And so Boston College, even though I think Clemson should win this game handily, if you're watching it and you want to see some little nugget to project in the playoff, that's the thing to watch. How well does Lawrence throw the ball in this game? And does Boston College have success through the air passing when they do choose to pass? Even in a win or a blowout win, or you can still glean a little bit for the future off those performances in this game.
All right, y'all, that's going to wrap it up for Clemson and Boston College. Just want to give everybody a reminder. In the comments, let us know what you think the score is going to be. Please subscribe if you are interested in this kind of commentary and content that we're putting out. Please remember, Clemson fans, if you're interested, and Boston College fans, we did a hypothetical this week discussing Clemson and Alabama. These videos, our prediction videos, are usually a little bit longer. We talk too much in the other ones we did this week, so we had to cut this one short and make it mostly a models-only discussion, but we hope that there was something in there that y'all found pretty interesting and worth your time on this one. Thanks so much, y'all. Have a great week, and God bless.